Welcome to the No Ordinary Cloth podcast, where we explore innovations bubbling away at the intersection of textiles, emerging technology, sustainability, and craft. I'm your host, Mili, a textile researcher and innovator. Today, I'm delighted to welcome our guest, Jennifer Droguett Espinosa, a Colombian and Chilean sustainable fashion designer and creative director with over a decade of experience in luxury fashion. Jennifer began her career at Viktor Rolf in Amsterdam before moving to London, where she worked with brands like House of Holland and collaborated with talents such as Phoebe English. Jennifer is the founder of Anciela, a circular luxury women's wear brand who layers South American folklore and culture into her practice, along with her strong sustainable and circular design approaches. Anciela is recognized for its handcrafted pieces and its commitment to conscious consumption, education, and community engagement. Her work has appeared at London Fashion Week, the South Bank Centre, and in publications like Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. She's also been a panelist at Billie Eilish's Overheated event in 2023. Jennifer is a passionate advocate for Latinx creatives in the UK and does a lot of work to support and highlight this diaspora. This is another special episode I bring to you in partnership with Fashion District London, a dynamic hub for fashion innovation in East London, supporting startups with innovation networks, affordable spaces, business guidance, and investment opportunities. And I wanted to quickly mention about an exciting opportunity brought to you by Fashion District. They're now accepting applications for their Evo Fashion program. This is a 4-month hands-on support program for emerging brands and fashion tech businesses designed to help you embed sustainability across your business, from supply chain and ethics to market channels and investment readiness. The deadline is 4th of August 2025. I'll leave a link in the show notes below for more details, so check it out. And this is an incredible program. And in fact, our guest today, Jennifer, was part of a previous Evo Fashion cohort, and you'll hear about how valuable this experience was for her and her business. All right, enough from me. Let's join Jennifer now on a journey to discover how heritage, innovation, and sustainability shape her unique approach to fashion. Hi, Jennifer. It is absolutely lovely to have you here with us today on the No Ordinary Cloth podcast. I'm so excited to get a peek into the heart and mind of someone who creates such fun and magical fashion collections through which you explore quite heavy themes, I would say, such as migration and childhood memories. So there's lots to talk about, lots to dive into. So let's get started. Your background and heritage is a big part of your work. So maybe let's start there. Tell us about yourself, Jennifer. Where are you from, your background, and when did you make London your home?
First of all, thank you for having me. This is very exciting, and that's a beautiful question. I guess I'm originally Colombian. I was born there, but my father is from Chile, so I had the privilege to live in both countries. But we all really loved living in Colombia, but back in the 2000s, it was really dangerous. So we, had to leave, basically. It was, the time of kidnappings and all the, I guess, legacy that, civil war and like drug cartels left. So my dad said, well, perhaps we should go to Chile, which is like a little bit more stable. And because he is from there, it was like easier transition. So in a way, we, explored that as a family unit, like the sort of leaving places and the fact that you couldn't take, things with you sometimes. So that idea of like, oh, you need to be very careful about what you take with you, because it's not a choice, like have to leave your dog behind or, or not being able to see like family that often, like decisions like that on an early age became quite prominent. And I suppose also the sort of concept of identity became something, because all of a sudden you have different accents, but then you go to different country. So then you feel like you don't really belong, anywhere, because then you're not Colombian enough or you're not Chilean enough. And in a way, you're never like fully like a fit for places because you look different or you sound different. So that I was kind of believing it since I was a child. So it was hard at times, but it also opened my mind to like, okay, we're all different and you explore different cultures, And I sort of took it as a sponge. So I was always really fascinated by discovering new places and traveling And I guess my dad, he used to be a professional cyclist. So he used to travel like to many places because of the sport. So then he went to the Olympic Games twice. So he would bring
Oh,
little
amazing.
souvenirs and things. So that
Yeah.
idea of like traveling also came from him. And it was kind of lovely to leave it through his like storytelling. So he would tell us about, I don't know, Japan, or he would tell us about, somewhere like remote or like Korea, or, and that was really, really nice, I guess, as a child, very exciting, that storytelling part of it. So after that, I don't know, I was fascinated. I was like, I think I need to go somewhere else. And I didn't really know what fashion was. So I guess for me, it all started. I don't know for the religious people here, like I was brought up as a Catholic. I'm not religious anymore, but there was the first communion, where you take like the Eucharist for the first time. And we didn't have like, we had very little money growing up. So we didn't like buy a lot of clothes or anything. That just was not a thing. It was a lot of hand me downs and secondhand things. But this was the first time that you could get a little dress made for
Oh,
you.
wow.
It was
Yeah.
kind of mini wedding dress in white or cream. So I remember we went to see like a seamstress in Colombia, went to the market to choose a fabric. And I mean, talking to the seamstress to say, okay, I want this little ruffle here. And then she took my measurements. And before I even knew what fashion was, it made me feel so special.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I put it on, I mean, it was not the best fabric, like terrible, probably polyester fabric back then, what we could afford. But just the feeling of like, this is made for me. I think that relationship with like clothes, it started there because it sparked something. I was like, this
Mm.
it's just such a special moment, and it's something
Yeah.
that you choose and is bespoke and made for you. And I thought I never forgot that feeling.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So fast forward to now, it's like now I know what fashion is, and and I feel that with my clients, that special relationship of when that feeling of making someone feel good because the clothing, that armor, it's for them and it's special, and they know who made it. And so I think that's where it started. But I started upcycling. I guess we call it like that now, but back then it was like, oh, mom, this old pair of trousers, can I play around? And she was like, sure. And then, turn trousers into a skirt, or, just finding ways. I didn't really know how to sew or anything. I think
Mm.
my mom wasn't very handy. My grandma, she used to make these ugly quilts, but like no one was like really skilled or
Yeah.
anything. So I was just like that. My weekends were spent like just exploring and just trying to see how I could ruche this or stitch these. And that's how I spent a lot of my weekends. And I suppose it was what was available. So in a way, it made me really aware of like, okay, materials are scarce. It is very special. You don't have that much, so you have to make the most out of it. And I guess, and when I was 14, then my dad said, oh, you kind of like this. Like I see you spend a lot of
Mm.
time sewing and doing things with like clothes. And then he gave me my first sewing machine when I was 14.
Oh, lovely.
And
Yeah.
we went to the shop, and then he said, I think you really like this.
Yeah.
And that's in a way how I was like, oh, wow, this could be something that I can do. And I started learning how to, it was quicker and like nicer to explore things. And I guess that was the beginning of all. But again, coming from South America, studying fashion or art is just not a thing that you do from when you're from a working class family. So I was a bit like, okay, this is a hobby, but, you know, what can you do with it? We're not sure. Like there was a lot of pressure on like, trying to like be a doctor or a lawyer or,
Yeah.
So in a way it wasn't, even for myself, that pressure was like, I think I can do this. But again, coming back to going into university or a degree and a big debt, So I was also thinking, mom and dad, like, I don't know, like, I'm not sure what to study. So I'll take a year, like a gap year off. I'll go work and do something and try to figure out what I want to do before you go into this like debt for life, And then I came to London actually. Came here to like study English and work. This was in 2008. And I mean, it opened my mind. I was like, London is
Wow.
crazy. I love it, but it's
Yes.
crazy. And it was my first encounter to fashion, like an industry of fashion. Going down like I used to work at a tea shop down in Brompton Road, and I mean the Harrods and
Yeah.
that was like my walk, and just thinking, wow, okay, this is like the industry, and there's like a huge world. There's a customer and there's like items, and you can feel the cloth, and So all of that was like for the first time introduced to me, and I thought this is fantastic. So I used to visit the V&A like in my
Yeah.
lunch break, and I was like, it's a free museum. This is
Yeah,
amazing.
I
I could
know.
see
It's incredible,
the
right?
Victorian dresses.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, and I can see them, and it's beautiful. So it really opened my mind to, okay, maybe I could work in fashion. I could study this, perhaps, but I will have to move. So that was always the idea. Like, I don't think this industry exists back home as
Mm.
it does here. So that's when I became, quite aware of it. And so when I went back home, I was like, yeah, I think this could be great. Actually, I took a short course at LCF, yeah, about pattern making.
Yeah.
And then it was amazing because it was a small introduction of like, okay, you can make things, just like patterns. Anything that I did before was like, I would drape it on me. It was very
Mm.
self-taught, very DIY.
Yeah.
Whereas this was like, no, there's rules and this you can do. So it also opened my mind to the options. But yeah, obviously I went back home and, London was like not really affordable for fashion schools. So I started looking into other options. I moved to Buenos Aires for a little bit and did, but it was really fashion business in Buenos Aires. So I was like, I think I'm a maker. I like making things. I'm not so much of like a business person, even though now maybe I
Yeah.
am, but
Yeah.
so that was funny. And then when I decided to see that what the options were, my life took me to Amsterdam, where they were like English courses, but it was way more affordable. So it was a real option. And then my boyfriend at the time was Dutch. So I was like, okay, this is beautiful. Then I moved to Amsterdam for fashion school over there. And it was really different, but it was, an English course, like beautiful
Mm.
city, like small. And, it was easier as a student, I would say. And that's where I did fashion school. But I always had London there in the background. I
Yeah.
said, this is a city that has a beautiful energy that drives me through it. And I love how international it is. I think that really stick with me through the years, and I knew I had to come back. So like everyone else, I applied for internships, and then I got a lot of interest from London. So I thought, okay, maybe this is the place I need to be. So I moved here with an internship. And then that got me my first job after at House of Holland. And that's how it all started.
Wow, that's quite a journey across multiple countries. I mean, I really relate to that because I grew up in different countries. So I really relate to what you said about your identity and you're kind of taking things from everywhere and you're like a sponge, you're absorbing all of it. But when people meet you, they're a bit confused about who you are. So you trained as a pattern cutter, and that's where you did your internship and then continued to work in that space. At what point did you feel like you wanted to step out and set up your own brand?
Yeah, that was another journey. Like I thought about it for many years because I mean, again, I was just so happy and I felt so privileged to work in fashion. In Amsterdam, I worked at Viktor Rolf, which was a dream. I mean,
Yeah,
me
yeah.
there, I'm like as the first Latina I've ever seen here, like, in
Wow.
couture. And
Yeah.
we went to Paris twice. And I mean, they had the ready to wear collection back then. So I experienced the ready to wear and the couture shows in Paris. It was a dream making like little dolls clothes for the museum. I mean, it was so wonderful that experience. It was a lot of work, but if I was quite good, I'm a good sewer, so they really like open up and like taught me many things, which was wonderful. But at any point, I was like, okay, this all seems like it needs a lot of money and influence and connection. So at any point, I could dream or think that I could do this. So when I moved to London, I was very realistic in the sense of I need to hustle just to get my foot on the door. And I did the internships, and then they say, okay, you're good, and then they get you a job and you go from there, and then word of mouth, people recommend you and you keep working. So I could never really dream. I just felt really lucky. However, I'm talking about perhaps 10 years ago. We weren't talking about cultural appropriation. That wasn't
Mm,
really a thing
mm,
that people were
yeah.
talking about. Sustainable fashion was like just touching the surface, with the true cost and fashion revolution. It was still very early on. But there was something that it bothered me in a sense of, you're researching, doing all these mood boards, creating these garments that have beautiful inspirations, but then they're all from abroad, and I think at a point we were researching something about Mexican culture, and I was just thinking, oh, it's a bit strange, I'm the only Latina here, and in most cases the only even like woman of color there. Like that's how times were different back then. But no one felt like it was weird. I think I was the only one that thought, okay, this might be a bit strange. Like we're taking from a culture that is not ours, or we're like romanticizing or these
Mm.
concepts that perhaps don't really belong to us. But I didn't really know how to phrase it or what it was. So I guess from there, like my curiosity sparked, and I thought, but who is doing it differently? Like from people I'm working, like who, and I saw there was like this resurface of perhaps like African diaspora or, Southeast Asian diaspora and new designers that were doing that. At the time I was working for Supriya Lili, and I thought, well, maybe there is something here, like, and I feel, I worked in a lot of workshops close to Tottenham, and it's a big Latin community there. So I used to have lunch like a Latin restaurant. And then I thought, we're here, like it's a quite vibrant diaspora, and I know there's a lot of talent around here, but no one knows we are here. So we yet are really invisible. So I was like, maybe there is something here, because obviously while you work in fashion, you realize it's not just about making the clothes, but it's also about creating that culture and how to show it. So you're creating images, you're creating a fashion campaign, you're creating an experience, a fashion show, fashion film. So there's so much more to just a piece of clothing. So there's a whole team involved and a whole storytelling aspect to it. And I thought, maybe there's a way of making, or creating a label that is celebrating culture at the heart, sustainability, inclusivity, because at the end of the day, fashion is a platform. Like, when you sort of study it through time, you can see what was happening at the time because of what people were wearing. So there's a whole zeitgeist context of clothing and the importance of that identity that clothes builds, in us human beings. So I thought maybe there's a way, but I was like, I don't know. I have no money. I have no connections. Did not go to a famous fashion school.
Mm.
So it's very clear on that, because I worked for those people that had gone
Yeah.
through the CSMs and the
Yeah.
RCAs of the world. And,
Right.
they had the money, the connections. And I thought, oh my God, I don't think this could be possible. So I started very small. I remember one of my best friends said, just do it. Like he said, you have friends, you know how to make things. You don't have to start all perfect. He said, people like to see the process and the evolution. He said, if everything's really shiny and perfect, it won't be relatable. And that was the best piece of advice. I was like, you know
Mm.
what? You are absolutely right, because this is who I am, and it has to be grassroots. I'm like, I know the communities, I know the people.
Yeah.
And it's my stories. At the end of the day, it's my own story from my own perspective, and there are heavy themes in there, but it's my perspective. And I thought perhaps there's other people that can feel what I feel, and they're having exactly the same experience, but from different points of view, different families, perhaps. So that was the most beautiful thing. I thought, well, it's an experiment. Let's keep it very lean. Let's keep it very grassroots, and let's hustle and see what, a friend had like a space in Brixton. He was like, knew the manager of the market there in Brixton Village. So I thought, you know what? He said, there's a space if you want to use it. This was pre-pandemic. So we did a little launch. I had a few friends that were dancers, and then I said, oh,
Yeah.
I can come dance. And, that was it. It was family. My sister did the makeup and the hair
Oh,
for the
lovely.
girls. It was very small, very organic. Like, I think we made the food ourselves for the launch, It was very like family, friends, community. But that's how it started. And I thought, well, maybe there is something there. And slowly things, I guess, became like more ambitious, as we thought there was some interest for this. Slowly I was getting like DMs on Instagram from like other Latin creatives, maybe like a photographer or a stylist, or we were actively looking for
Mm.
Latinx talent, and
Yeah.
Instagram was the tool to do it. So then I realized, okay, there is something to this. There are other people who are amazingly talented. They also feel we need more representation across disciplines, not only unique to fashion. And then it really made me excited. I was like, perhaps this could be it. So that's how it started.
Wow. Amazing. It's a really bold step to take. And this was in 2019. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's correct.
And so you had this drive and motivation. What was the vision that you had in the beginning? And how has that vision evolved over the last many years?
So I guess it was always about the pillars. I was like, I never wanted to be part of the problem. Like I was really aware, also having worked in fashion for some years and being like a really active with fashion revolution. So, okay, we have clothing for 6 generations. the landfills, like now in Atacama Desert in Chile. I never thought that could happen,
Right.
and it hits home, it hits there. So I thought, if I create something, it has to be with purpose. It has to be solving a problem. So if the problem is like, okay, the visibility is not there for some creatives, the empowerment is not there for communities, a better garment that's made with traceable materials, traceable supply chains. So I thought, okay, maybe this is something that I can address because it's what I know. So I was like, okay, it needs to be culture, sustainability, community visibility, always. So then that's for me is like, if that's embedded in my business model, it always has to be there. So every problem, every project has to be addressed with those 4 pillars. Otherwise, we can't do it, or it's not for us, like, which is fine. So it becomes like a clearer way to operate, and also keep it very lean and very adaptable, which I think is the only advantage when you're small. So I suppose that vision, even though it started very organic, like sometimes I didn't even know how to name it that way. But now, 6 years down the line, I'm like, no, this is it. This was the values that have always been with me. And now I'm really confident and I feel really powerful about keeping them. And with everything that I do through my supply chain and all the value chain, everyone who we cross pathways, like it has to be that, and it has to have a purpose deeper than just for my own ego or to making, because for
Yeah.
me, it's like I'm thinking in the long term as well, more than creating like my own brand or this is what I've done. It's more like the legacy that we can create. And if anyone can like continue that legacy, even after I'm gone, like that is the concept that it stays. And I think that's beautiful because we do need those brands that are engaging with community and are celebrating culture and community. We don't have enough of them coming from the real source and telling the real stories. So I guess for me is like, perhaps when we don't need that anymore, then there's no need for the brand like that strongly believes in these values. But I feel like, we're still needing this engagement and this visibility. So that's what the mission, at the end of the day, using fashion as a platform to do that.
I love that you said you didn't quite know how to name this, and that the clarity about the 4 pillars came over the years. Sometimes you feel like you need to figure it all out in the beginning, but it's only through the process. And like you say, you just do what you can with what you have, and that brings clarity. The name of your brand is Anciela. Is there a story behind the name?
Yes, there's a
Yeah.
story. And again, I guess that's the only thing that I really thought about very deeply at the beginning, what to name it. I did not want to name it like, a namesake brand. I thought because then it becomes about me. And I thought, what could be nice to celebrate that heritage? So it's actually a mix of my grandparents' names. So Angel or Angel and Graciela, but we all called her Ciela for short. And I thought that's nice because then it's in the name, that sort of celebration of roots and heritage and a mission, because they're not longer with us, sadly. They kind of passed away quite young. So it's, in a way, it's celebrating that story, their stories and my story, and, that legacy in a way. So it's that reminder, and everybody has grandparents. I think it's beautiful too, especially when you speak to diaspora. Sometimes I get to know, immigrants that have been here for like 30, 40 years and 4 generations of Latinos here. And it's really special because everybody has their own story and remembers things in a certain way. So I feel like that's a reminder, constant reminder of it. So yes, that at the beginning was very clear for sure.
Nice. Great. So now let's get into your creative process a bit more. How do you layer, I guess, craft and Latin folklore, childhood memories? These are all themes that you bring in, migration. How do you layer all of that into your creative process and bring that out into your collection?
That's a really good question. I think for me, I try to see what's happening now, or like a feeling that it sounds okay. I started just before the pandemic as well. So then I think like that became really clear of like, okay, we're in confinement. We can't really see our communities, our people. So that sort of, I think, okay, what stories remind me of this? So for instance, during the pandemic, I started then revisiting books and pieces of poetry or literature from Colombia or from South America that I remember. I'm like, okay, I think this was quite similar to what we're living now. So then 100 Years of Solitude, that's a book that you have to read at school. And I revisited from like my gaze now as a woman, I don't know, I think 50 years later, I think it was written, 50 years ago. And then with my sort of female gaze of like a bit more on the feminist side. And then I realized this is interesting because it talks about that confinement and also mistakes coming across generations and repeating themselves as a cycle. And I thought this is what the pandemic feels to me right now. Like this happened 100 years ago. We have learned nothing. And, that is sort of like layering what's happening now, what has happened before, and then with some kind of story from Latin America somehow. So this is one of my favorite novels of all time. I think it's really like it encapsulates what like Latin families are and the complexity of it all. And I think everyone can relate to those sort of problems and story and I relate things to each other. And then I start putting references together. I love research, so I'm always going into a lot of images and images from the past, the present, the future, like everything. And I'm a consumer of culture in general. I love music, films, books, poetry, everything. So I create a playlist for each collection that I
Mm.
make
Oh,
that's
wow.
music that
Mm.
reminds me to things like music is so important to me and what I do. So I guess with everything together, I start piecing together how this would look visually. So with all the references and, I started thinking, okay, historical garments, how did that look back then? Was the book set in a certain time? And then it
Mm.
became really clear that this book was quite sexist. I was like,
Okay.
we're
Yeah.
not celebrating enough. Like the actual powerful characters of women are quite secondary, whilst they're very key to the story. So for me, in that particular collection, inspired by 100 Years of Solitude, it was about celebrating the female characters and their influence on this family and, from their perspective. So that was really clear to me. This is what I'm going to do. Like, I don't per se relate too much to the men in the family,
Mm.
but to the
Mm.
women I do. So how would I sort of take those characters and explore them in their complexities and things and their qualities and problems and struggles. And so that's, for instance, in that case, visually it became a fashion film because it was during the pandemic as well. So out of a sudden, I love film, but I never thought I would make any films.
Mm.
But then you start asking people, okay, who knows how to operate a camera? And like, can
Yeah.
you do this? And then we start researching about how would that look visually. And we make our own, adaptation of it. And it's very experimental, very low budget, but it was such a great experiment to do because then we were exploring fashion as an image. And
Mm.
and the garments
Yeah.
sort of were a vessel for to tell that story.
Yeah.
And I make all of the props. I also saved up, like during the pandemic, I volunteered to make PPE garments with one of the NHS charities that was in my area. So again, we were making these PPEs amazing, and then every day bags of waste, this plastic waste. That is, what are we going to do with this? So I took a few of these bags, and I thought I can make something with this. So I made the backdrops for that fashion film of that collection. I also macrame some pieces. So that was the head pieces. Because for me, it's like, perhaps it's not that obvious in the sense of like it's inspired by something, or it's not necessarily a very straightforward reference that you can
Mm.
see,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's more in the story of the material itself.
Yeah.
So it's coming from, again, a mistake from a humanity from
Mm.
100 years
Yeah.
ago. And I'm like crocheting it, knotting it in this material in a repetitive manner, and the character who's obsessed with like weaving in and weaving the embroidery is wearing it. So there's this whole sort of layer. Perhaps it's no one knows unless I tell them the story. But for me, it's like really important that the symbolism, that sometimes it's very graphic and obvious, and sometimes it's not. It's there, and I quite like that. And I guess that's the only way you can layer it, because I do take from many things, and it's quite complex, but in a way, visually, it tells many, many stories. But I quite like that. I think I like it when people look at something and they don't know what to make of it. And then they're just thinking, what is this? And I realized that after the pandemic, we had an exhibition with the Colombian embassy, and we showed these pieces to the public for the first time. So I had to be there in the space, and people necessarily, they didn't know who I was. So I was just there like looking after the space. So I could hear the feedback, and there was this jumpsuit with like a beaded bush, but it was really oversized and like a skin color, and I remember people reacting to that. So, what is this? What, and in a way, I loved it because I thought, this is it. Like, I've never hear people, and everyone has their own stories and takes about it. And that fascinates me. I think that's fantastic when you start a conversation. And I think that's what I want sort of my pieces to be.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you really create space for them to add their stories or their past and reflect that onto your collection as well. You do describe your work as a little eccentric and magical. I absolutely love that. Tell us a bit more about this. How did that become part of your DNA?
Well, I guess I'm a maker, right? So sometimes, I get excited about many different things, whether it's like a really complex sleeve pattern or this fabric that's like woven with really special threads that my friend made. I think everything is so magical. I'm just like, it's the beauty of the thread and the beauty of the making. And when you leave through it, and I mean, everyone's a friend in our supply chain. So we all get so excited. Everyone's such a geek about different disciplines and absolutely love it, And or there's a filmmaker that's obsessed with Super 8, and I'm like cycling the film to get it developed in like wood grain. And I think like it has to be fun because that's what fashion is at the end of the day. It's a conductor for stories, so it has to be
Mm,
fun. But we all get excited about very different things. Like a stylist and I would spend hours and hours talking about these characters that we love and what she's gonna wear, and oh, maybe what is she gonna do, and
yeah.
I think for me, it has to be fun. I mean, everything it takes so much effort and resources. And again, it's going back to purpose. Like, I think at the end of the day, it will be silly not to. I think to use fashion as it's like most outrageous expression of it all. Like, of course, it's wearable. Like, I wear all of my pieces. I wear them for cycling, for working. So they are functional pieces, and I think it has to be functional. Absolutely, but also we can have fun. Like sometimes again could be a hidden detail that no one knows why it exists, but it is there for to be explored, to be felt. Like I'm a very tactile person, so I think sometimes on a picture you can't really translate how it feels like, but then when people touch it, I'm like, oh my God, this feels like this. I didn't expect it. Or, so I think it became sort of key again through the years and developing different experimental fabrics or shapes. It became very clear that it had to be that element. It has to be exciting, I suppose. I think, otherwise why bother? Like I see so many like things, and it's okay if you want to have a basic brand, and it's okay, but also in our times, I mean, it's quite urgent. I feel like we don't say it enough that the world's burning. So what I'm saying is like, yes, we all have like the freedom to express ourselves through our art and however you want to make it, but we also need to be responsible. Like, we can't that those days of like doing things like for fun or for our own egos, I think they're over. I think it has to be very intentional and solving specific problems. So yes, it needs to answer to certain problems, but it doesn't mean it cannot be fun, basically. So I do think, yes, if you're making it and it's meaningful and it's solving a problem, I think it should be fun and full of meaning and purpose. Yes.
And so, one of the fun pieces I thought from your collection is the sort of pillow headpieces that you create,
Oh
which is
yes.
very iconic, your signature style. Do you mind sharing what the story is behind that?
Yes, that's a little bit. I was thinking, especially last year, it was we did our show at the South Bank. It was an open show, for the public, kids, everyone, which was very exciting to me because I think fashion should be lived through, a medium that's open to everyone, like more inclusive. Like fashion shows sometimes can feel very elitist or very closed spaces during Fashion Week, which we've done as well, which is really lovely. But for me, this was exciting that it was going to be open to the public. So I thought, what is it that we need? Because most people perhaps experience fashion in a different way. People not necessarily know what it is or what purpose it serves. Like at the end of the day, we all live in that sort of bubble sometimes. So I thought, I guess what we need, and last year, with all the wars and the horrible things that are happening in our world, I thought maybe we need that connection. And I feel like we need to dream it first of the reality that we want in order to achieve it. Because if we cannot dream it, how can we achieve it? So the idea behind this piece was the dreamer look, and it was to have a piece where people could interact and write their messages. So this show was inspired by the work of Tavares Strand that said, "You belong here." And it was this neon sign at the South Bank, really big. And it was all about celebrating, migration and the stories, and that we occupy the space and we live in this city. So we took over the terrace of the South Bank, and then the set design was the map of London and the Thames, like
Ah,
taped on
yeah.
the. I can show you pictures as well.
Yeah, I'd love it if you could share that. Yeah.
So then it was really great because kids would like run on it, like interact with it. We had some trees made from upcycled, discarded garments from trade. So I went to their sorting facility in Wembley, and they gave me. I was like, "Give me the rejects, what you don't want." And then I made these recycled trees with those fabric and garments that otherwise they go to landfill or they compress them, and who knows where they go. So it was again to tell that story of like sustainable fashion can look like this, can be fun, can be a fun tree where you can tie on little messages of hope and your dreams. And how do you feel? What does belonging mean? Especially in a city that's built with migrants, and how do we celebrate our stories? So I thought, if I know I'm feeling like this, a lot of people must be feeling the same. So the idea was, how can we answer to this work together? And then through a fashion show, and we got all the same models that work for us for Fashion Week, and they're fantastic performers. So I told them this is going to be open, and it's going to be, you'll have people there and kids, and you never know how they will interact, but they love the idea. And I think it's all about, we need to show and make sustainable fashion more accessible. So then this final look, the dreamer look, was the finale piece. And it had a really long cape of 5 meters. And I had wrote a little piece of poetry that was made with offcuts and embroidery on it, but it had a lot of space around it. So the idea was that people would come after the show with markers and write down their hopes and dreams, or something
Wow.
that inspired them that day. And it was that was a really obvious reference of like, okay, I'm dreaming, and this is a piece. And it was also my like an ode to Viktor Rolf. Like they did that pillow look as well in the 90s, because that's where my journey started. So it was like, I come from there, and they are dreamers, and it felt that way when I was there. So I took that from them, that storytelling, and we need to dream. And especially when times are really hard, like we do need to keep that hope. I think the message was hope. We had these sponges that were deconstructed, and I undressed the model, and then flat they were letters, and it said hope. So it was also just to, okay, like literally, it is about hope, it is about dreaming, and it is about writing down how we feel and what we do. And the beauty of this piece is like it keeps growing. So I took it then to our London Fashion Week event. So it was the signing
Mm.
book for like the guest book.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
people wrote again their messages about hope and dreams. Some people did little sketches. Everybody interpreted in a very different way, which is really lovely. Then we took it to the Good Clothes show in Birmingham. Then it went to Yerevan Fashion Week in a more fashion space of like catwalk, and then people coming after the show. And again, it was really beautiful because people write in their own languages as well.
Mm.
So it was,
Mm.
we all, as different as we are, we all have hopes and dreams, and we all want the same things, right? Like we all want a nice life and save for our loved ones. And I think fashion is that vehicle sometimes, to bring people together and have fun, and people need to touch it as well. It's like, what is sustainable? What is a sustainable textile? What is
Mm.
recycle? Oh, this is recycle, but they have a really different perception of what recycle is. And so I like that, to play with like, no, touch it, feel it. This is here for you to experience.
Absolutely. So you've touched upon this, and I'm glad you mentioned earlier, we can't just do things for fun and for our ego anymore. It has to be, you have to be responsible and very intentional. Could you share your approach to, you touched upon this now, but in a bit more depth about your approach to sustainability and circularity, and how does that translate practically into your work, into your collections?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I guess before we spoke about circularity as we do it now, for me, it was always like, okay, what is the journey of my garment? So I see it like that. There's a book I read that was Travels of a T-shirt. It's quite old now, but that book is fantastic because it really follows that journey of a garment. And I became obsessed by it because I thought it's right. Like where is the clothes ending up? And it all starts when you choose at the design stage, like to design, things out of it that you don't want, and design with the things that are good, right? So I was like, if you're small, it's up to you. You make all the decisions. When you work for a big company, sometimes it's not up to you. Sadly, you have to work with what you're given, and you have no choice. But that's the beauty of being a business owner and making those decisions. They're not the easy decisions. Easier is business as usual, of course. But when you make that extra effort and say, okay, no, let's source something better. Let's go and speak to the mill. Can they do this? So for me, it was always approaching the whole cycle of a garment, from the fiber. So where is that fiber coming from? Can we trace it? Where is it growing? Who's growing it? What's the quality of life of people growing it? Where is it being, like the yarn, where is it being made? Where is it being woven into its fabric? How does the mill look like? Who's making it? So again, it's about people. I think I love people. I'm fascinated with people's stories. And like I said before, everyone's gigging about a certain aspect of fashion, which I love. Everyone's an expert in their field. And that fascinates me. So then I go really deep into these stages of the supply chain. And for me, it's about analyzing those steps and simplifying it. Sometimes it becomes so complex that then no one knows what's happening. And I think that's mainly the issues that we experience now about why it's not sustainable or why isn't circular, because we don't know where things are coming from. We don't know who are making these materials, or where is it made. Like, again, I'm a maker myself, I'm a tailor myself. I make most of my patterns, most of my sampling. So you become really aware of things and the effort that things make. It's all a craft that is developed through the years, that is learned by experience, and it needs to be appreciated. So, and I think, again, we're running out of time as well. So, I'm happy to always experience and test different things. Like, all of our textiles are experimental, they're recycle weave ones. So I think we have to explore different options, and perhaps a bigger company can then say, oh, okay, you're the test study and case study that is can work, is successful, people resonate with it, and then perhaps take it on. So I do think that perhaps can be a purpose of when you're small. And I mean, again, not everyone is on the same page. I think circularity or sustainability means very different things to many different people. Sometimes people adapt it to their own agendas and what it serves them. But I think, in a way, we're part of this ecosystem. So for me, how I approach it is like, I'm living here in London. This is my ecosystem. It's a country that has very rich heritage in making and textile production and history that needs to be also respected. So the best thing I can do is like minimize my impact and to do what I'm doing. And how can I do that is understanding that ecosystem where I'm part of, and how to work together with people. So collaborate, speak to people, to try to solve problems together with the suppliers. Now we're doing natural dyes. So again, it's a Mexican lady who has this knowledge, proper alchemist, gorgeous, you know, beautiful work that she does. But it all came about, hey, how can we make natural bleaching? How can we
Okay.
approach
Yeah.
this? How can
Mm.
we intervene, like try to make new techniques with natural dyes? And she said, well, we can do it, but there is something about the pH changing into live pigments. And that's how we developed our sort of version of it, of natural bleaching, that was changing the pH of different natural pigments. So, sometimes it's about solving these problems and approaching it, but in a collaborative way with our suppliers. So for me, that's is being part of that ecosystem, but understanding that you're just part of it, and you have to work together with people. And it's about symbiosis, and it's about working together, celebrating each other's skills, and also how can we thrive together. And that's at every level, like from makers, and also shows and campaigns, and how to then promote that marketing, that impact also with the consumer. I think is very important. Like, we often don't talk about that user face, but it's also up to us to give that knowledge, give that transparency to people.
You were part of the Fashion District Evo fashion program. Were you part of the first cohort or?
Yes, I
Yeah.
was part of the first cohort. Yes.
So tell us a bit about what that experience was like and what happens during the program, because they're opening up calls right now for this program again. So just to get some insight from someone who's done it.
It's a wonderful program. I mean, first of all, I love Fashion District. I've been with them since the very first festival in 2021. And I think it's just a wonderful space. They're very supportive. And, Helen and all the team are amazing. And I think they really understand what small businesses need. And sometimes it's that guidance, that sort of holding hand of like, look, it's fine. You can do this, you can do that. And they're always curate a really nice team of experts that are, providing the sessions and giving the workshops. And I think that's key because it's really the best of the industry people that are doing it right now and thriving in their space. So it's getting advice from the best. And I think that's quite instrumental. Like that's what you need. Sometimes it's about you're doing the right thing, but it's about bouncing ideas with someone else who's in that space and sees many businesses every day. So it's really good to get their take on it. So for me, it was really good to have that space and to talk, in a safe space with like other businesses, but also with the experts that they provided. So I couldn't recommend it more. I think it's a wonderful program.
Amazing. And was there any particular challenge that you took to the program, as something you wanted to figure out? And what was the outcome?
Yes, I think scaling sustainably, it's the question, especially if you've been, having a business for like 5 years. I think I started to have, my 5-year plan. But then you realize how does sustainable growth look like? Because it's not the usual route of like, oh, let's get investors in and it doesn't quite work like that, because you're not perhaps pursuing profit as money necessarily, or sometimes money is not going to solve all your problems neither. So how does that look like? So I think that was my main concern. And then the learnings were like, it's just a slower process, and you are doing the right things, but you have to trust that process. And at the end of the day, it is about adding value for yourself, for your community, for your customers. So it's just a slower, like the curve is not looking very steep. It's just a much more steady growth, and it's just sort of managing expectations of what growth looks like. Perhaps it's not always reflected on, it doesn't have to be that extreme or exponential. So it has to be more in line with a healthy growth. And I think for me, it was always about going debt free. Working for other people, you realize that it's very easy to grow too fast and getting a lot of debt. And at the end of the day, you have nothing to answer for, or get like a lot of investors and then you have to answer it for them. And it becomes then about, business as usual. So we're back into that slippery slope of what is the problem in the first place, that is overproduction, overconsumption, waste. So I think, again, it's about looking at the long term and just having healthy growth. I think that's the part of it that I have to learn about, maybe operating a business that is not necessarily always pursuing, heavy, really aggressive growth.
And you believe that the Evo Fashion program helped you sort of figure out how to grow in a more sustainable way?
I mean, certainly they give you the tools also with the new legislation coming in, what does that mean as a small player? Like what you need to be addressing. So that was really useful. And again, about really talking these difficult questions with the experts, I think it gives you a broader like perspective of where you are in this sort of crazy like industry.
And then in 2025, British Fashion Council launched the report Moving the Needle, Low Carbon Transition Program for SMEs. And you were one of the 50 London SMEs that was selected to be part of the program, which is brilliant. Could you tell us a bit about this initiative and what you did, what you learned from it, and how has this changed your approach in creative process since?
Yes, it was a wonderful program as well, like a great team of experts helping you through it. I think the main challenge was to get our heads around what concepts mean. Like, what does decarbonization mean? What does circularity mean? What options there are? I think they were really, the first issues were to agree on that, because everyone had their own ideas of what it was. I'm a true believer that it's a space that is changing and we're learning. So we're sort of figuring out as we go. So it was great to experience this as an SME. Again, you get to make all of the decisions, and that comes with certain consequences and a certain carbon footprint. But then it was also good to analyze on the material choices. One of the findings was that the biggest footprint is still at the making stages in the material choice. So then it even more so like imperative that we're aware of the materials we're choosing as a brand. So this was a fantastic, I think in a way I understood it because of speaking to people within my own supply chain. But now having it quantified and measured, I think it really gave me that confidence on the material choices I was using, and the, how to navigate that in terms of volume as well. because the more you produce, bigger your carbon footprint. So I guess having these numbers, it's even more like, like we don't throw away anything in our studio because we're like, if you can't visualize what waste looks like, you're like, okay, out of mind, out of sight, right? So when you can see things in this case in numbers, or you can address them more effectively. So that's what that program did to me, to really sit down. Sometimes it's crazy, you're managing all aspects of a business. This was really sit down and write everything down for the next 5 years. And not only through decarbonization, but also on circularity. So decisions that, sometimes we don't account in circularity. For me, it's about the whole cycle, user face as well, care instructions. It's about end of life. How does that look like? Could we go into different models of rental? Could we go into things of refresh for our customers? So it was about teasing the idea of how we can also make sustainability or circularity into a business and to viable revenue streams that perhaps we're not addressing. So it was really good to really take the space to analyze what the possibilities were for the future and also dream it. I think a lot of them perhaps are like really ambitious, because we were doing really great work. And it's also about how can we make it more concise, more precise, more palatable and easier for our customers to also be part of it, be on the journey. And I suppose that's where the digital product passports were such an easy thing to implement, because it's accessible, everyone can see it, and that's what we launched as well at the Fashion District, our digital product passports.
We'll get on to that. I mean, in your work, you're as a pattern cutter. Obviously, you're sort of using zero waste pattern cutting techniques, and you talked about your material choice. On the circularity side, what are the new kind of services or business models that you've explored recently?
So we are working with like telling people what to do basically with their garments. So all the care instructions are accessible on our website. And we also have a refresh scheme. So we've only been in business for 6 years. So the idea is always to have the best quality and longevity in our products. But let's see, repair businesses, they can come to us. We can repair the garment for no extra cost. They can also have a refresh, service towards the end of life. Or if they just don't want it anymore, they can also bring it back. So with our take back scheme, because I think it's important, people sometimes perhaps don't know what to do with clothes. And I think this is a big issue. And when they think, oh, maybe then if I give it to someone, donate it to charity, but then that brings other issues. And I think that is our responsibility as brands as well, to help people through that journey and tell them about their garment. And I designed with adaptability in mind as well. So then people can style the garments in different ways. Like I experienced it with myself. Like I love wearing garments for different, events, but also for a work day. And I think, again, for those design decisions at the beginning and like what garment you're designing, I think adaptability is quite key to extend the life in the user face and just to add more value to the garments and to customers when they're sort of buying from you.
I'll pop a link to that report in the show notes, because I think there's really valuable resource for anyone, who's got a small brand in fashion. Another topic that's really important to you is conscious consumption. That's a big part of empowering and educating customers. How do you do this?
Yeah, I mean, we host these free events in and out of Fashion Week, and sometimes it's in a forum of panel talks, and then we invite some of our friends to talk about incredible initiatives. And we always have a display so people can see pieces, can experience our recycled jackets or recycled materials, upcycling. How does that look like? And it's always an interactive element to it as well. There are free events, and people can sign up really easily through our website. So I think it's about making accessible spaces for anyone, for any ages. Like we would host also workshops with our community, with our amazing Latinx charities or nonprofits. And then with their own communities, we offer workshops, and we use the offcuts from our studio to use for the workshops as well. So people can experience textiles and also understand, okay, maybe I can do this little patch over here. So the applications of repairing perhaps in their own time, or and people from all ages as well. I think that's also really key to engage children, but also older people into the journey, and also connect these people. I think that's really key to make community, beautiful conversations arise in nice workshops as well. So I guess it is about accessibility, and it became a thing. We started in 2022 it was a workshop online, and a lot of people showed up, and I thought, oh, that's fantastic. And people have these questions. It was during Black Friday, and it was about, you know, greenwashing and what to look out for and read the labels of our clothing. And for me, then it was like, yeah, watch out for the materials, what can you do with this? And for me, that's when it became a little bit, it was organically. I didn't really plan to have these things, but I thought there is an interest and there is a necessity for people to understand more about clothes. And I guess when for you it's really obvious as a maker, you know what fabrics are, what not, but not for everyone. So I thought it's nice to be really transparent about it. And this is an easy way to engage as well. And yes, we love the shows and that's fantastic and the campaigns, but I think there's also this other avenue to engage with either consumers or customers, but also students or, people of all walks of life that just want to know more about it. And at the end of the day, to go beyond the fashion sort of crowd, just to engage with anyone.
And the digital product passport is one way that you can share that information with customers. The DPP, the EU is still trying to finalize what kind of information is embedded in it, but you're doing this because you want to communicate information, not because you're trying to meet regulations, which I think is brilliant. What kind of information are you adding in that digital product passport? Because consumers are still not really familiar with this concept yet. So how are you making sure that they know that this is there and they can find information?
Yes, so this was in collaboration with Smart DPP, and they're a brilliant startup. And last year we launched an AR try-on feature. So they have a digital market space where you can buy the garment digitally, and it looks exactly like the real one. You can transfer it to Roblox or Minecraft, or you can buy the real garment, but you can also customize the colors. So it was all about thinking how people can engage with fashion, not necessarily as like the real piece that you can buy, but also try it on first. And it was a really fun, interactive thing for consumers to do. And then they launched now the Smart DPP. So then they asked me if I would like to collaborate. And I said immediately yes, because we know all of our suppliers. And I think for me, it's going as back in the beginning of the journey of the garments, so from the fibers, and you can see everything here from where the fiber is coming from, materials, any certifications, suppliers, dyes, how the garment is being made, like location, places, then also care instructions that are really important. You can also see on the fun side if any celebrity has worn the
Right.
piece, which is quite fun as well.
Yeah.
And then also what to do after end of life. So then the refresh take back scheme, then what to do. And also you can try it on the filter, and the try on feature is embedded also there. So you can try it on directly with a URL. You don't have to download the app anymore. So that's quite fun to do too. And it's in the form of tags. So it's just a QR code that you can scan. So we launched it like that at the Fashion District. It's a tag that people could engage with.
You've designed clothes for, as you mentioned, London Latinx musician and songwriter Desta French. And Anciela has become a real platform for the Latin American diaspora here in the UK, right? And you talk about it so much here. Could you share some of the other ways that you celebrate and champion this community and the creatives and makers here in London?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I've been so privileged to meet so many beautiful people, by doing what I do. And it's quite multidisciplinary. Like sometimes, if we made a film, we make sure that not only the talent or the people in the film were diverse and, from the diaspora, but also the crew. That's really important as well, because often we didn't want to fall into, okay, let's just put a token person and that's what we're celebrating. But it's also the people behind the crew and, the camera person, the stylist, the director, everyone somehow is like from the diaspora. And I think it's important because in a way, we have to celebrate each other's work, and there's a lot of talent, and sometimes we don't have the visibility. So it's important to team up and celebrate these stories. In the case of Desta French, I mean, she's wonderful, and she's done also so much on her side for engaging and having visibility of very talented musicians in that space. And I think we're just like-minded that way. So she's a collaborator for years already. She's been in many shows, on fashion films during Fashion Week. And I just really love what she does. And I think her media is the music is what unites people. And so it's fashion is that, that those garments that create certain image and can connect as well. So for me, that's how we do it. And on the practical side as well, working with diaspora charities and nonprofits, and also engaging with all sorts of people, not necessarily just in the creative space, but also like creating those spaces that are more accessible. I think that's also important, and connecting, really, just giving more access also for everyone beyond the creative spaces. I think that also has become like really important.
Yeah. Well, I'm a new big fan of Desta, so do tell her that. I loved her
Oh,
music. This is a question I ask all my guests, and I think maybe you touched upon this already, but I wonder if there's another story that you can tell us. You understand the power of garments and storytelling, and you mentioned about your first dress for the first Holy Communion service. Is there any other piece of textiles or garment that holds really deep meaning and value to you, and something that you hold on to dearly? I feel like you might have lots of examples. Pick your favorite.
wow. I mean, yes, that's a really good question. I think from our very first collection from Anciela, that was inspired by my city of Medellin, where I come from. So the whole idea was celebrating sort of that migration stories that you take, like when you have to leave somewhere in a hurry, or when it's not safe, you can only take the very precious things. So the idea of like, how do you take that with the clothes that you're wearing, and how do you take home? So it could be in the form of a print, or like a lot of pockets that are in your garment. So there's a very special piece, that's this jacket that has like these 3D pockets, that is also inspired by the mountains where I come from, as beautiful valleys and mountains. So I thought it's so nice that you carry like home with you. And it's a metaphor, of course, but I think it's really special. So this keepsake, or things that you take as a migrant, and they hold importance to you, and maybe not to anyone. Like I love little objects, and you know pets, or little, yeah, keepsakes, and I feel like in this garment you could keep those, and it's small and things. So I adore this jacket, and I think it holds that story. And again, it's a story that you don't necessarily see it. You see a cool garment or a 3D garment, but there's also like the secret meaning of it. And I love that is perhaps something that you only know and it's precious to you. But we all have these stories. So I think it resonates with a lot of people too, which I quite like. It's such a nice feeling as well to use fashion that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it looks like you've captured quite a few memories from that time. When you were young, what age were you when you left Colombia?
I was 10.
10. What are some of the happy memories you have from your time there?
Just music, dance,
Ah, yeah.
colorful, like nature. I think I forget every time I go back, is everything's lush and green and giant monsteras, and it's that sort of nature is there, and it's very lush, and the vibrant colors. It's something that is really beautiful, and I get inspired a lot by nature as well, and but also like people, and the sort of the contrast of like big nature, but it's in the city in a way. It's like together,
Mm,
so you live with it. It's not like, oh, let's go to a forest over there.
yeah.
It's like it's in there. So I
Yeah.
like that sort of ecosystem, that's like, the barrios, the sort of regular neighborhoods that are a bit, humble, or like where I grew up at least. And they have like colorful places and colorful houses. And I think that inspires me a lot, is that contrast of opposing things, I suppose. Beautiful,
Mm,
invasive nature, but also like concrete and DIY colored house,
yeah.
and different materials together,
Yeah.
tiles
Yeah.
and things that are
Yeah.
old materials. I think that's a big inspiration as well. And music, 100%. I mean, if you yeah, any Colombian child that stayed up until 3 a.m. because of the family party, and there's
Wow.
music and dance all along, and with food. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like a lot of fun. Are there any recommendations that you'd like to make to the listeners of books or podcasts or websites where they can learn more about yourself, but also some of the aspects you shared about circularity and sustainability?
Yes, so we have refreshed our website. So we're adding like new content every day. We're also working on our YouTube channel, Anciela Fashion, where you can see our beautiful shows. But also we're starting a series of celebrating our suppliers. So we're going to do exciting videos about everyone who's been involved, so you can really hear the stories behind the work we have created, but also new things, and always like a little touch of education with how we do things in Anciela and how you can also do it and how easy it can be. Resources that are amazing, always, Fashion Revolution, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, books, of course, Travels of a T-shirt. I think it's an oldie, but a really good book that I think everyone needs to understand, especially it would make sense to you now that we have stories like Cantamanto or Atacama Desert and you understand where clothes are going. So Trashion, also great. Many organizations doing amazing work there, or foundation. I mean, yes, I think things are coming along as well. Like, I think at the end of the day, it is about creating more awareness, and not everywhere is perfect, of course. So you have to, what I always tell people is like, study a lot, get a lot of resources, and then make your own conclusions and see how you can apply it in your life. I was in a competition last week, and my feedback was that I was doing too much. And I thought, perhaps people are not doing enough, because that's very subjective as well. So I think nowadays the urgency is there. So I think it doesn't need to be perfect, but just do what you can. And that comes with researching and knowledge and getting your own perspective and how you can improve life around you as well. And it can be small gestures. It doesn't have to be all big things.
Right. Yeah.
But we all can make a difference. So.
Oh, that's a beautiful, beautiful note to end on, and a call to action for anyone who's listening. We should be doing a lot more. And thank you so much, Jennifer, for I just felt like I just journeyed with you through different countries and through your life. And yeah, I could really sense your passion and your energy for the work that you do and the vision and the mission that you're on. And I love that you do that through a community. It's not just about you, it's about the community, and you take people along on that journey with you. I'm really looking forward to your new collections and hope to run into you somewhere in London at some point.
Thank you so much for having me. That's really kind, and it was such a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Jennifer's world, whose work is as rich in storytelling as it is in craftsmanship and sustainability. What an inspiring story from her time in Chile, just not understanding or knowing about the possibilities in the world of fashion, and to see her in London as a thriving luxury fashion business. Jennifer's journey really reminded me that fashion can be a powerful vehicle for cultural celebration, community empowerment, and positive change. Through Anciela, she's not only redefining what luxury means, but also showing us how creativity, responsibility, and inclusivity can shape a better future for fashion. It was just wonderful to hear about Jennifer's experience at Evo Fashion. Again, this is a fantastic program, and I would highly recommend that you check it out and apply for it if you are eligible. The link is in the show notes below, and the deadline is on the 4th of August, 2025. If you'd like to learn more about Jennifer, be sure to check out their latest collections, workshops, and educational resources on their website. I've added a link to the British Fashion Council report on decarbonisation that we discussed earlier, and all the other resources that Jennifer mentioned. I've popped some links in the show notes as well. Great. Well, thank you again for joining me today. Stay tuned for more episodes, and don't forget to subscribe for more conversations at the intersection of textiles, technology, craft, and sustainability. A review from you would mean the world to me, so please take 30 seconds to leave a message, and I would really appreciate that. And until next time, I'm Mili reminding you that there's no such thing as ordinary cloth. Every thread tells a story.